Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for our panel, Culture Advice from Top Company Leaders. My name is Nina. I'm an Associate Marketing Manager over at Glassdoor, and I will be one of your moderators for the day. We're super excited to be partnering with BambooHR on this webinar, so hope to everyone on the line that you find it incredibly useful. So just a couple of housekeeping tips before we get started. Your audio is going to be streaming over the web, so please make sure your speakers are turned on and turned up so that you're able to hear all the wonderful information our speakers will be sharing with you today. All lines will be muted to avoid background noise, but you can ask questions at any time by typing them into the Q&A tab you'll see in the lower left corner of your window. To be mindful of everybody's time, we will address all questions from the audience at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to submit your questions whenever you may have them. We will also be live tweeting this webinar using the hashtag GDChat, so please feel free to engage with us socially, tweet out anything interesting that you hear, and we will be sure to connect with you. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our amazing moderator for the day. We have Scott Dobroski, who is the Director of Corporate Communications and External Research here at Glassdoor. So Scott, I will let you take it away for us.
All right, thank you, Nina, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone on the line today. I am personally very excited to talk about company culture and why it matters, and mainly because time and time again, research consistently shows that it has a direct impact on recruiting, retention, and even a company's bottom line. And so we're going to talk about all of that and how it supports business objectives, which I think everyone on the line today definitely cares about and has an interest in, sometimes from different angles. So we want to touch on those different angles, and so we have a pretty diverse panel today to talk about company culture. And first off, I want to introduce Cassie Whitlock. Cassie is the Director of Human Resources at BambooHR since 2012. She's been in the HR world for about 17 years now. All different sizes of companies, organizations, building processes, investing in company culture, nurturing it, building it, everywhere. If it touches on company culture, Cassie has been there and done it. Second, I also want to introduce JB Kellogg. Excited to have JB. JB is one of the co-founders, co-CEOs, and the COO of Madwire. And Madwire is a really cool digital marketing company specializing in small business marketing software and services based in Colorado. And JB is an interesting story. He's personally very excited to speak about company culture. Mainly because he invests in a lot at Madwire, and as such, his company has been, I think, recognized as a standout company for company culture. Madwire has been named a best place to work by his own employees on Glassdoor for multiple years, and JB himself has been named a highest rated CEO. And that plays into company culture as well. Madwire, by the way, is one of Inc.'s fastest growing companies and has been for about 5 years now. And then finally, Lane Rankin was going to join us today at Illuminate Education, another company based in Southern California that invests a lot in company culture. Unfortunately, he's had a interesting emergency involving a hotel and a fire. But the good news is Lane is safe. Everything is okay. He's not able to join on today's call, but instead we have Jim Yang, who's head of marketing at Illuminate Education, and he also is able to speak about their investment and offer tips and advice for all of you guys. So before we get started, I would just love to hear from our three panelists today on what they love most about company culture and why they wanted to speak about it today. And Cassie, I'll start with you.
All right, I think I heard that was me supposed to jump in. Sorry, I know we're having some audio difficulties here. I'm super excited to be here today. I love geeking out on culture stuff. For me personally, the reason I care about culture so much is because of how it impacts human beings. I care about individuals and the opportunities and experiences that they have within the workplace, and I think it matters. So that's why I'm super passionate about culture.
Awesome. Thank you, Cassie. And JB, tell us why this is near and dear to your heart. We will check on something there. JB will come back to you. But Jim, tell us about company culture and why you care about it.
Sure thing. So I think it goes back to what Cassie said. It's about people. When I think of culture, from a business perspective, I think you can think in terms like a differentiator, help you in the marketplace. But if you really think about what it gets down to, it's really about the people. These are folks, when we think about it, that the best story I hear is like when you go home at night, how are you going to treat your family? If you've had a really bad day at work because of the terrible culture and people don't treat each other well, what does that mean for your family life? That's actually something our CEO, Lane, who you mentioned couldn't be here, talks about a lot. And so by creating a culture of people really care about the same thing and really care about each other, which is what we've tried to do here, I think it just really helps people in their own lives, and that's a worthwhile goal. And I think that plays itself out in our product, in our customer support, and it plays out in the lives of the families of the folks who work here.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, we are excited to get started and talk about this. So, JB, hopefully you're back on with us now. First question we want to visit here is, how can your HR department get your buy-in to actually invest in company culture?
Hey, can you guys hear me now? This is JB.
Yes, JB, we sure can. So we'd love for you to touch on that first question. And it's really, again, just how you get your HR department to buy in, to invest in company culture. And this is from your angle. You are, the co-leader of the company. And then we'll go through some different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. I mean, for us, I know how important culture is. So kind of pushing that down from my perspective is maybe a little bit easier than some situations, but things that are important to me and would be, to any CEO, I think, would be things like just being able to showcase some of the things via the data, like employee feedback, and what that looks like when you invest in your culture. It's typically obviously going to be a lot stronger. And because of that, you'll generally see more incoming applications. So if you're growing as fast as us, you need a lot of new applications to work through on a monthly basis. And so you want those to be of high quality if possible. And so building your own essentially online reputation from an employment standpoint online is hugely important. And so that's a part of how we leverage Glassdoor, is just build our reputation there, and then folks looking for, to work for a company like us, they find us and we get more applications that way. And then a big one, I think, is just turnover. If you can showcase that turnover is significantly better when you invest in culture, typically an experienced employee is going to be substantially more profitable than a new one. So you don't want to be turning through people. You want them to stay forever if you can. They're just going to get better every year. And so by investing in company culture, you're able to usually see those types of metrics. And so I think those things, for me, as a CEO, are things that I like to see, and that just helps, kind of incentivize everybody to invest in that. And things we, kind of throw around here are taglines like "happy people make happy customers," and it's so true that generally, if you have a good company culture, you also have good customer feedback and reviews as well. So they work hand in hand. And the other thing is you're never going to be happy doing anything. You could have the dream job. I could be playing in the NFL right now, and there's going to be times where you don't like it. There's going to be periods, no matter what you're doing, that you don't necessarily love. But if you love the people you're around, it will always pull you through. So I think that's the most important thing, is just, building a culture of family and support and friendship, and you have fun, but you work hard. Ultimately, it's going to drive success on multiple levels. And so as a CEO, those are the things that I like to see.
That is great to hear. So Cassie, next question for you. JB sounds like a great CEO. That'd be great if all CEOs recognize so readily the value of company culture, but we hear time and time again, not everyone is there just yet. So Cassie, same question, but from your perspective, how do you get the HR department to get your buy-in to invest in the company culture there, and how does that relay itself up to the C-suite as well?
Yeah, that's great. I'd love to talk on that. Let's be honest, sometimes it is a battle. And sometimes that means you need to choose as an HR professional, is that really the right organization? I don't encourage that you march a battle that you don't feel that you can win, but I think there are some definitely some approaches that are meaningful. So to start with, I would say it's important to make sure that what you're doing in HR is actually aligned with the goals of the business and not the other way around. And for many in the HR field, we really feel that our goals are aligned, but the way we communicate about them creates dissonance and doesn't connect us focused on. So being mindful of that. Professional, you understand aspects of employment, engagement, or in a way that others in your organization may not specifically be focused on. But it's the overlap and the connection that's there, and that's your job to shine a light on those connections. And just like JB was saying, start talking about real data and how it impacts the real day-to-day life of the business in order to be successful on the bottom line. When it comes to culture, the data is already out there, and I think it really speaks for itself. Culture is a value proposition and a differentiator. And if you don't know those numbers, that's your first to-do item. Get out there and do your homework so that you know the numbers inside and out, and you can start having these quality discussions. And then when you're having these discussions within your organization, with your C-suite, working with your leaders across the teams, you want to be looking at hiring, retention, turnover, productivity. But I would also do it with an internal lens. Sometimes it's so easy to talk about the benchmark in the industry, but what does it actually look like inside your company? Most CEOs that I've met really know the in and out of the business every day, all day. And so to be able to talk to the points you guys are already having there, whether they're the pain points, how we can improve that situation through culture, and even taking time to recognize here's the success we're having as a business because of how culture is impacting the work that we do every day. So it's really about persuasion and influence and collaboration, and again, making sure you're aligned with what the business is focusing on and approaching the concepts of culture through those words that are common in your organization.
Awesome. And I just want to remind people, we're actually already getting a bunch of questions, which is awesome. So we're going to try and get to some common themes of the questions as we go through this webinar, but we'll also have some specific questions at the end. So I just want to let the people on the line know that we will do our best to get to all of them. JB, one question back to you, JB, before we move on, is what exactly do you do to invest in company culture? And I'm going to suspect sometimes people think it's the free commuter subsidies, the free snacks in the office, but that is not company culture. So what do you specifically do to nurture it and build it? All right, we are checking on JB's audio. Apologies for that. But the point that I wanted to bring up, what Glassdoor research has actually shown, in addition to third-party research, is that when you're talking about investing in company culture, it's not about the benefits and perks. That's often kind of a little bit of a shiny object to help people get interested, people interested in your company. And there's nothing wrong with that. But according to our chief economist here at Glassdoor, who's a labor economist by trade, the three leading factors of strong company cultures are the long-term employee engagement, I should say. So this means happy employees who want to work for your company and who then stay retained at your company longer than normal. Number one is company culture is the leading driver of long-term employee engagement. Number 2 is career opportunities. And number 3 is trust in senior management. So I point that out because company culture is shaped by these assets, providing interesting work for people, new career opportunities, and things like that. JB, can you explain a little bit more on that? Looks like we might have you.
Yep. Sorry, I switched handsets, so I should be good here. Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of things as far as investing in company culture. Number 1 is talking about it a lot. I mean, with our senior leadership team, we do leadership training once a month, and a lot of that is just cultural stuff. So I think it's important to have leaders out there that are advocates of company culture, and so we start there, and that kind of filters down. But, you know, as far as additional investments, we do a lot of company parties. We shoot for big goals, and then we celebrate them. So usually there's, you know, a monthly party. Twice a year we do a really large company party, which is coming up actually in a couple weeks for us. We call it the Orange Party. Our colors are orange, so everybody wears orange. It's a big, huge party, really good time. And we do nice company videos a lot. We'll invest in cultural videos, and we'll usually debut those at those company parties. So if you go to madwire.com, you'll see some of the past videos there on our homepage. But and then a good work environment, I think, is important. So a nice workspace, and then some amenities that they can get away for a second, like ping pong and those other things, I think are important. That people share a lot of ideas when they're doing those things. So, and they get to know other parts of the team. We're very team-based too. And one thing we do is we set a company goal, which is based on the team goals, which is based on the individual goals. And so everybody celebrates successes. There isn't that negative competitive vibe like you get at some companies. So everybody celebrates successes, and then ultimately, if we hit the company goal, all teams, you know, win. We have a party. But I think probably if I had to put it on one thing and say that's the most important thing, it's leadership training with the team, just about company culture and how to lead people, and just kind of starting there, I think, is pretty important.
All right, that is awesome. So kind of a takeaway that I hear already there is you kind of practice it, build it internally there at Madwire, and then you promote it yourselves as an organization, but also lean on your leaders and certainly your own employees to advocate you know, for this great culture that has a ripple effect of benefits. So let's move on to the next question. And Jim, you've been waiting patiently, the head of marketing. And sometimes we talk about recruitment marketing, so I'm going to ask you this question. How can your recruiting department get buy-in for additional budget or resources to promote your company culture to prospective candidates? So let's say you have a great company culture, you think people should want to work there. How does your recruiting department win someone over to get a few extra dollars and then actually promote it so you get those great informed candidates?
That's a great question. Yeah, I'll give a shout out to you guys, obviously, Glassdoor. We've worked with you guys, and in these kind of things, we think we're doing some really unique things out here at Illuminate, and so we work with you guys quite a bit and folks like yourself to really get our message out, whether it's through webinars like this or ebooks or blogs. On our website, we put a number of things to give really a peek into our culture, a peek into what it's like to work here. And then as far as sort of getting budget from a recruiting perspective to maybe do those things, to have the freedom to do those things, to have the budget, to increase budget for that, it goes back to a little bit of what was mentioned earlier. You can actually tie it to business results, right? I think in terms of employee retention, right? I think in terms of Lane's ranking on Glassdoor and our company's ranking on Glassdoor, and I think in terms of the growth and sales and revenue for our company, all of these things are very measurable. And the linkage that maybe is a little bit more tenuous, but that we believe very strongly in, is that the culture we're driving here, which is going to attract really high level and strong candidates, and the feeling they get here is going to affect those three things I just mentioned, the bottom line. I'll just dig into one area where it becomes very evident. What we over and over we hear when our candidates come in to interview, they leave and then we start joking around. They say things like, that was the strangest interview I've ever had. That was awesome. I felt like I was just hanging out and really getting to know you and vice versa. And sometimes those work out, when that person gets hired and sometimes not. But the point is, I think we try to communicate our sense of culture even in our interviews and really give people that sense. And so that way we attract the right kind of people who are really bought in and have an alignment with us. And then it's a very self-virtuous circle in that sense. When you do things that way, then your arguments of getting more money to do, say, advertising on recruiting sites or things like that, those become, I think, much easier conversations to have when you have things like retention, your company's business growth, and your results on places like Glassdoor because of these kind of activities.
Awesome. Thank you. That's interesting. And Cassie, I'd love to toss this question to you as well. How can a recruiting department get added budget to promote, the company culture to prospective candidates? Because time and time again, you'll ask for this budget. We all know it has value, and then maybe a CEO or someone will say, "But wait a minute, let's use these dollars. We could get another software engineer in here, which has value too." So how do you win some of those arguments?
Absolutely, and those are trade-offs that we're always having to make in the business world, right? Is what's the right place to invest those resources and funds? And I think it's important. I've never heard a CEO come up to me and say, "Please go hire mediocre workers so we can reach our less than inspiring goals." They don't do that. I mean, I know I'm laughing because it's absurd, but the reality is we want quality. If we need quality in order to be competitive and effective, then we have to attract that. If you think about going to the store to purchase something, if you've had a small child and you go toy shopping, look at the packaging that they offer. I've never seen a toy package that didn't have a level of transparency to it, so you could actually see the product you're buying. A 5-year-old little girl is not going to get excited about Malibu Barbie if she can't actually see what Malibu Barbie looks like. So just having the words aren't going to be enough. So we need to start embracing identity and sharing what your company actually looks like with those potential candidates. And again, it comes back down to the numbers. Are you even aware of what's going on in your local labor market, right? Who are you competing against for that labor? How have they positioned themselves in the marketplace? And what should your position be? Not as a reactive perspective, but in driving forward your goals and initiatives. How should you be positioned in the marketplace? And then have conversations about what does make your organization unique so you know what to highlight. I mean, why wouldn't you promote that? One word of caution I would put out there is that it's important to be authentic. Don't just make up crap, because people will see through that faster than anything. Make sure it's authentic to who you are, because it ought to matter. And if you're seeing positive results there in your organization, then share, talk about it, get out there and advertise that. When we're in an up economy, right, that fight for talent is critical. So have the conversations with leadership, with your executive team, but have actual data to back it up so that you can talk about it. Again, we know there's numbers out there on turnover and the benefits that you have the longer employees stay within your organization. That's what helps you compete against the choices we have to make. Should I buy this programmer or should I invest in this recruiting opportunity? That would be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're going to go to the next slide now, the next question. JB, I'm going to toss this one back to you. How do you partner with the department heads to drive positive culture? And you've touched on this a little bit, but why I wanted to pose this one to you is I'm going to assume you have certain department heads that maybe buy into positive culture more than others, or maybe understand it more than others, or are maybe better like practitioners of it day in and day out. So how do you partner with these different forces, if you will, who often have some different interests or levels of understanding it?
Yeah, well, I think the important thing is just to make sure that everybody understands the overall mission of the company. There should always be alignment there, and so for us, it's helping small businesses grow, and we do that a lot of different ways. But at the end of the day, that's our goal. And if we do that, we feel like people, there's more jobs, charities are funded, kids are put through college. So we feel like we're making the world a better place if we all focus on doing that. Of course, there's a lot of things we have to do well to make that happen. So we have a motto here called execution excellence is our standard, and our standard is non-negotiable. And that's the same motto for every team and department here. And so that goes outside of job descriptions. For us, it's everybody has the same job description, which is it doesn't really matter what's put in front of you. There may be trash on the floor when you're walking down the hall, but execution excellence says pick it up, or if your desk mate's phone's ringing, you answer it. So we have this underlining core mission and message with all the teams. Now, each department and team is going to have a different subculture within the company, of course. We have salespeople, and then we have content writers, and their personalities are generally a little different. So the culture is different in those teams to a certain extent, but everybody's on the same page with the overall mission. So we try to get buy-in with our leadership meetings with all of our department heads and leaders and make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're overall pushing that message, and that everybody's invested in the overall company's success. And that really helps all of the teams kind of work together on that front. I think the main thing for us, one of the main takeaways that anybody could put in place is we have something we call 410s. You can call it anything, but for us we call it a 410, and it's just a feedback form that everybody in the company submits once a month at 4 o'clock. That's when we close. And we don't want them to spend more than 10 minutes on it, so that's where the name came, 4 to 410. But essentially in this feedback form, they pick their department, they pick their team, they give shout-outs. So anybody that did something outstanding during the month, they give them a shout-out. Then they put any ideas that need to be implemented for training for new employees. And then they put any other ideas that need to be implemented or improved upon just on company level anywhere at all. And this has been really powerful for us. When that's submitted, it gets automatically routed to all the appropriate department heads and leaders and those sorts of things. But the feedback we've received in those on a monthly basis has been a huge positive for us in our growth. We make changes monthly based on that feedback. And I think, part of culture is just letting people know that you care. People don't know or care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so if you're listening to their feedback and you're taking action on it, and it doesn't mean that you always need to do what they're recommending, but at least you say, hey, I got your feedback. This is kind of my view on that. What do you think? And they may end up agreeing that it doesn't make sense to implement, but they're happy that you listened. And other times it's like, hey, this is an unbelievable idea. Let's do this. So those are just a few tips that we do here that have worked pretty well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll tell you, I saw the 410 mentions in Madwire reviews on Glassdoor. That's a consistent theme there, so it's interesting you hit on that. And just for everyone on the line, I'll tell you, when we look at Glassdoor, another data point here is employees love working at mission-driven company cultures. So that's just something I wanted to share, that when in doubt of how to build a company culture or what is ours, well, yours could be, for you to explore, one that certainly aligns with your mission because we know employees really value that. So this question also now to Jim. Jim, you are a head of a division there, head of marketing, and so how do you partner with other departments to make sure this happens?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. I think we're not very top-down in our company, but the one area where we are, I'd say, consistency on our mission and consistency that Lane, our CEO and founder, models leadership. That is definitely from the top, and I think that needs to be the case, I would say, in most companies, that leadership really needs to be modeled at the top. For us, there's a couple things that I think come from that. One, empowerment, 2, listening, and 3, what we kind of call servant leadership. So when it comes to the listening part, we have something very similar to the 410 that JB mentioned. It's through a company called Glint, G-L-I-N-T. And it's a monthly survey. It's very quick. It's like 5 questions, but it's a pulse type of thing. How are you feeling? We even ask questions like, are you looking for another job? It's a very honest survey. How much do you feel like being here, basically? And it's 100% anonymous. And then the results are reviewed by all department leaders. So we provide the department heads this data about the groups. Again, to them, it's also 100% anonymous because that's, as you can imagine, very important. From those, and comments are allowed in those as well. So from those, we really, every month, try to get that pulse and react to it. And then as a leadership team, talk through, what does this mean? How can we improve? And that, to me, the listening part is extremely important. Flipping that around a little bit, mentioning empowerment, I think part of, quote unquote, in this slide, I said driving, it's important, but part of the way you do that, and something I think we're fairly successful here, is to empower folks to lead. And by that, meaning give them the freedom to come up with the ways that they'll lead their teams to drive culture, in this particular case with their teams, whether that's offsites, whether that's certain kinds of meetings, whether that's the reward structure that they use, whether that's how they want to communicate the culture of our company to new folks and things like that. So people are really come up with amazing ideas and approaches, right, when you empower them and you trust them. And that's the other big item there, to trust them that they'll be able to carry out the things that you trust them to do, and in this case, it's relaying the culture of the company. And I guess the last thing, for us, it's leadership, but we espouse here more of a what I call a servant leadership mentality. And again, it just means the leaders here are really challenged to lead their departments in a way by modeling and serving, sort of the last in line to get food kind of thing. Not that that's the best example, but I think that's just one example. And that's a way that they can model and show their team that they're there to serve them as a leader. And that really helps to drive our culture as well.
Awesome, thank you.
If I could jump in here.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Sorry, one of the things that I wanted to highlight is the words that you used in your question is about partnering. And to me, it's really important to define what it means to be a partner in order to have it be effective, especially when you're talking about how can the HR team partner with department heads. And this comes down to having goals, but it really takes time in that department so that you truly understand the problems that they're facing and that you actually share in the risk and rewards of what you're trying to work together on with them. And so in order to, it's really going to require a personal investment on your part no matter what your role is.
Awesome. Thank you, Cassie. And that is actually helpful. And I did want to ask you, Cassie, the next question that we're going to go to right now. We've touched a lot on building company culture, fostering it, but a lot of that is understanding what your workforce feels, how they're thinking at any given time. And so when people want to give feedback, that's great. But Cassie, what would you say to CEOs or other senior leaders who are reluctant to ask employees for feedback?
Here's exactly what I would say. What are you afraid of? Now, you're probably laughing at that, but I'm serious. What are they afraid of? That's a cue that you need to sit down and have a really important conversation. You need to understand what their concerns are. What could possibly go wrong with asking for feedback? Sometimes we don't want to know because we already know the answer, and we're unwilling to do anything about it. And so we feel like if we just ignore it and don't ask, then I don't have to do anything about it. But there's an opportunity to change perspective on the value of feedback within your organization. So I have an accounting background, and I'm familiar with the amount of work that it takes for your organization to kind of close out the financial books each and every month. And speed and accuracy are two critical components of that, and the reason that they matter is that the business leaders, your C-suite, they're waiting for that information to help them make important decisions that are going to drive your company towards success. And I've never met a business leader who didn't want to know the revenue numbers right after the month closed. That almost just seems ridiculous. So in that same light, why would you ever decide that you didn't need information, aka feedback, from the people you hired to be aware of that information or aspect of your business? So the reality is your employees have opinions, they have ideas, they need to be able to share that, and if you don't let them, they will find ways to share it outside of a scope that you can do something with, or they're going to act it out with the organization. So it's are there, and sticking your head in the sand is not going to be a successful plan for how to deal with feedback within your organization.
That is a fascinating perspective. Thank you, Cassie. And actually, here at Glassdoor, we always say the genie is out of the bottle of sorts when it comes to workplace transparency. With sites like Glassdoor, yes, but it's not just Glassdoor. When you look across the landscape right now, people are writing reviews on Glassdoor. They are tweeting. They are sharing photos with captions of your workplace. They are blogging. We just saw this with some other big employers, let's call it, under the microscope right now. So nothing is stopping people from sharing their perspective of what it's like to work there. So I guess what you're saying, Cassie, is there's value to embracing the feedback, not being afraid of it. And so I want to push this question one more, a little harder, and to JB, feedback can also be personal. And so JB, as CEO, I'm going to assume that while you're a highest rated CEO, I haven't seen any CEO have a perfect 100%. So while more than, I think, 9 in 10 of your employees approve of you, there's still some that no one is perfect. And so why do you believe in feedback and really wanting to hear it from your employees? All right, we are checking with JB, but we're going to move on to the next question. Right? Oh, JB, back, wonderful.
Yeah. Hey, sorry. Yeah, I would say that the most important thing is you want to know the feedback. You don't want an issue to be out there that you don't know about, number one. Number two, there's this saying, winning is the best deodorant, and I think that's pretty true. When you're doing really, really well, you think you're perfect and nothing stinks, but in reality, there's things that can still be improved. And so I think a lot of people get stuck in, hey, we're doing really well. We don't really need to ask everybody for feedback, do we? But really there's a lot of things that can always be further improved. And so asking for that feedback, I think, is key. And yes, you're not going to have great feedback every time. That's just not the way that it works. You're always going to have some negative feedback here and there, but as long as most of it is strong, you don't need to really worry about your reputation. I think the important thing is, in a situation that might be negative, is how you respond. And so if you stay positive, state the facts, kind of help tell the rest of the story, it's kind of like a mini judge and jury. When somebody sees those reviews, they see one side of the story, then they see the other side of the story, and you let them decide. And so that's how you tackle that in the reviews. Never want to be combative, never want to be negative back. Just tell the truth, be honest, lay the facts out, and then the person reading it can decide. So I wouldn't really worry about negative. If you're investing in company culture, 99% of the time it's going to be good feedback. So when you do get some negative things, it actually just really brings more validity to your reputation, I think. If everything was unbelievably perfect, that would almost be too good to be true.
Thank you. That is very interesting. And just in terms of, piggybacking on the spirit of feedback, we've done analysis on Glassdoor too that, just so you guys know, the job seekers who are researching your employers on Glassdoor at least, most people read about 6 to 7 reviews before forming an opinion about a company. So one bad review will not make or break you. The same way, one glowing review will not necessarily boost your apply starts exponentially. Job seekers are looking for common themes at your employer. Where they're looking to potentially work, and they tend to see those themes in about 6 to 7 reviews. Moving to this next question, Jim, I'm going to toss this one to you. We hear feedback, or you ask for feedback, you hear feedback, and then what do you do with it? Because sometimes you might have to have difficult conversations. So how can your HR team best prepare you, Jim, to have difficult conversations with your workforce?
That's a great great question. We have we actually have a bit of a framework for that, especially when these conversations are, which I assume you're talking about, sort of a one-on-one or small group type of thing. We have a term here that we use. It's called carefrontation, so kind of a smash-up of caring and confrontation. But the idea is it's a framework here. It's well known to everybody, every single person who works here by like the third day they're here. And the idea of it is, rather than a lot of companies where that I think we've all seen and been at, where there's backbiting or gossip, another form of that, and those kinds of things where things seed. The first question we always ask is, have you talked to this person about this? And if not, that's what all the leaders do. First thing that Lane will say if you bring an issue with another person, have you talked to them about it? And if not, then the directive is it's time to carefront them. And by that, we have it's a pretty simple thing. You talk to them one-on-one. You do it out of caring. You do it because we care about each other. We care about this company. And we care more than to let this thing kind of fester and get to a place where it's unhealthy. And so in a very calm, and you're always asked to wait a little bit if you've kind of got your emotions running high, wait a day on it, and then just find a quiet time, go for a walk especially, and then talk through it with the person that you mentioned. And then what we find is the vast majority of the time, folks are very much able to kind of talk it out and work it through. The biggest challenge with that is many people, myself included, we don't love conflict. We don't love confrontational discussions. So it's really kind of, and we do a training, and each year at our yearly retreat we have sort of a refresher training to really how to go about it. So people have kind of that framework embedded in their mind. And because it's such a quote-unquote official thing at the company, there's space for it. When you say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about something, people know that it's out of caring for them.
Interesting. Thank you, Jim. And Cassie, I wanted to pose this one to you too, since you work in HR. What are the best ways to prepare your teams for difficult conversations with your workforce? And many of those difficult conversations may be based on the feedback that you're actually, candidly asking for.
Absolutely, and that's an area that I spend a significant amount of my workday is partnering with business leaders who are preparing to have who are preparing to have these crucial conversations, as we call them at BambooHR. But Jim highlighted a great point, that you really need to provide a common framework that helps to facilitate these different conversations. At BambooHR, we've really embraced some of the communication skills that are taught in the book, Crucial Conversations. So rather than having a confrontation, we approach and say, hey, I need to have a crucial conversation. And right away, it lets the other person understand that there's an important issue to discuss. The second tool or framework that we've used to help create a culture of open communication is we have 7 company values. And one of the company values is assume the best, and another one is be open. And I really like to partner these values together. It's super easy for folks to look at the assume the best and say, well, I'm sure that Shelley didn't need to do that, so I'm just going to let it go. That's actually what it's not supposed to elicit. It's supposed to say, I know Shelley cares about the success of this organization and wants the best for me, and there was what happened wasn't okay with me, so I need to go seek to understand. I'm going to go be open with Shelley and have a conversation to find out more information so that we can resolve the issue or concern or move forward and not repeat the same mistakes. And when I counsel with different individuals in the organization, there are 3 things that I remind them of. The first one is just remember we're talking about human beings. There's a human element here. And we really like to self-soothe by telling ourselves this is business, it's not personal. Well, let's get real, it is personal. So make sure that you're willing to talk about the personal aspect along with the specific business issue that's at hand. And then a way of doing this is starting by building a genuine relationship with each employee. If you can care about the individual that you're having a conversation with, you can better identify and develop win-win scenarios to resolve the issue that you're bringing up. So remembering the human element is first and foremost. Number two, I encourage them to practice. It's really hard. We all have it to do and we stay super busy. But these conversations matter. It matters that they go well and they end with outcomes that improve your organization. So practice, practice, practice. Conversations like this are really stressful, and usually it causes us to look inward, and we start to worry about our own feelings and how we're going to cope with the uncomfortableness of the conversation, and that's actually the opposite of what you want. You need to be alert and assessing the other person as you're having the conversation so that you can notice, well, I can see that they've stopped listening to me, or I think that they misinterpreted what I said and they've taken it personally. This type of awareness is going to give you the chance to clarify what you are saying and what you are not saying. And it does take practice to be good at that. And the third thing that I like to remind people about is don't assume you actually know all the facts. If you go in and start a conversation seeking to understand, you might actually be surprised at what you're going to discover. But if instead you approach the conversation by stating what you already know, you're actually telling the person this isn't a conversation, it's just a fact set in stone. So that I encourage members of our leadership team to approach these difficult conversations so that, again, we have outcomes forward rather than just kind of this negative cycle and nobody wants to talk about any of the issues we're facing.
Very cool. Thank you so much. And just doing a quick time check, we have about 14 minutes left. I'm going to ask one more question, a rapid fire round, if you will, for all three panelists, and then we'll get to some more of your questions that have come in. All right. Rapid fire, here it goes. I'm going to go Cassie first, Jim, and then JB. The question is, what CEOs or company leaders inspire you, and which companies or CEOs would be them? And your goal is to answer it, and why, in 20 seconds or less.
20 seconds possible. Without naming names, I admire people who have courage when they don't have to. So whoever it is, regardless of the role, I don't think you have to be a leader to have a meaningful impact in your organization. Have the courage to step and do something that's going to make a difference, whether it's in a specific employee's life or whether it affects your entire organization. I admire people with courage. All
right, Jim?
I actually have one from Lane that he had mentioned once. That's a Patagonia founder. You have to look up his name. I'm going to go with Jan Chouinard. He was passionate about the environment, started a company to follow his passion, treated his people well, tried different innovative solutions, and is stuck with what he believes in. He does the right thing for the right reasons. And then the second person, there's a gentleman named Chuck Blakeman. Look him up, Participation Age TED Talk. We just espouse a lot of the things that he talks about in his TED Talk, and we've actually had him here a number of times. Love the guy, and he's been a real blessing to us. So for those who haven't checked it out, it really helps with the company culture if you listen through some of the things that he points out are important.
Awesome. And JB, wrapping it up here.
Yeah, I would say Tony Hsieh with Zappos is a good one. He's really big on culture, and he has a really good book on that. I can't remember what it's called, but kind of telling his story. So Tony Hsieh, I'd say, would be awesome. And then Gary Vaynerchuk's on social media a lot. I like his positive mindset, how he just doesn't accept any kind of negativity. It's just always a positive mindset. Positive minds create positive outcomes type mentality. And so I'd say those two guys would be pretty good.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So positive, passion, and courage. I like it. All right. So we are going to turn now to some of the many questions, as many as we can get to, from our great audience today. So first one, and Cassie, I'm going to have you answer this first one, please. The question is, if you're tasked with rebuilding a culture after significant changes in the organization, what would the panel suggest are the most important places to start tackling this? So really, something significant happens. I guess it could be positive or negative, but how do you rebuild the culture and or maintain it, I guess, depends on the situation.
I would always look to some of your foundational elements, mission, vision, values. If you've had huge changes in your organization, it might be time to relook at those 3 tools that you have, and I would invest a considerable amount of time ensuring that it was properly aligned with whatever direction you're taking your organization or trying to steer away from. Spend time on mission, spend time on your values, and spend time sharing that vision with team members.
All right, awesome. And this next question for JB, I think this is a good one for you. The question is, how can you establish company culture if it's not readily identifiable? How can you revamp culture if it's an outdated one?
Well, I think that goes back to getting buy-in from your leadership team on what they think the culture should be, doing some leadership training with the team. You don't need to invest a lot of money in that. There's great modern YouTube videos with modern speakers talking about culture and working with younger generations and those sorts of things. So I think that kind of goes back, like Cassie just said, nailing down your mission. Who do you want to be? What are your goals? What do you want your culture to be? You know what I mean? Let's figure that out as a leadership team. Let's brainstorm on it. Let's all buy into something, and then let's execute on that. And so if that means additional leadership training for the rest of your team or just doing some things with the whole company as a whole, doing some all-hands meetings, saying, hey, this is who we want to be and this is where we're going, just getting everybody to buy into it. I think that's how you make a change like that.
Okay, and I think how you tackle this can also vary depending on where you stand within the organization. So Cassie, Jim, any thoughts on this one too, about establishing company culture and or revamping it, depending on where your business is at a given time?
This is Jim. I would just add to what the folks said. I feel like that word trust comes back. If you're a new leader or need to try to reestablish things, it really I think starts with as was talked about, mission and values and things like that. But as a leader, I think you need to build trust. You need to be authentic, and you need to really believe, embody those elements, whether that's through servant leadership or other things. But really then start working to gain the trust of the organization and team if you're new. And from there, I think it's a solid foundation to build upon.
You also have to be really proactive kind of in this return and report environment. If you're talking about facilitating change, right, we're talking about change management. So making it a priority on your leadership team about how you're reporting back what's working well and what isn't, and that you're constantly measuring to ensure that you're getting the results you want. Because if you're not, you need to know that fast so that you can adjust and get it right.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so this next question I might go back to Cassie. How do you create brand ambassadors for your company? So you have a workforce, hopefully a great engaged workforce, but also maybe some employees who are not so engaged. So how do you create the brand ambassadors for your company and let them speak?
I think it actually starts with the hiring process. That's actually important here at BambooHR. And we try to find to join our team that care about our mission and how we want to go about accomplishing success here. So finding people who care about being brand ambassadors is first and foremost. But then what do you do in your organization to kind of structurally facilitate that happening in natural ways rather than artificial? And that comes down again to the guiding values that we have. We have 7 values, and it talks to every employee about how to think, act, and interact in ways that we all have a clear understanding of what it means. And people who want to get on board with this are excited and want to talk about it. So then we work with our teams to facilitate ways that they can actively be brand ambassadors, whether it's through the trade shows that we go to or through employee referral programs, and they can welcome new people to join the team, or whether it's folks who are excited to go out there in the social media realm and share what's awesome about our organization because it matters to them. The key with brand ambassadors, it's not that you handed them a script and they can successfully read out loud. It's that their experience is actually mapping, and that's what brand ambassadors are doing, is sharing, this is why I care about this company, or this is why I value this. So give them opportunities to share what they're experiencing, and I think it's a great thing to focus on.
Thank you, Cassie. I couldn't agree more. And Jim, wanted to ask this one of you too, as a actual head of marketing. When you're a brand ambassador, one could argue there is some kind of a employer marketing, recruitment marketing element to it. You often, I'm sure, have roles that you need to fill probably very quickly on your team. And so how do you leverage your employees to help get the word out and help you find those really great informed candidates?
Thanks. Great question. I don't think it's probably a secret or any special sauce of technique for anybody on the phone, in the sense that we share it out to our employees and we let them know. We put it out on our social media outlets. We do some advertising, all those kind of things. I think that's not surprising to anybody. I think where I say, and it's not a quick fix, unfortunately, but it goes to what Cassie says. If you're internalizing the sort of the mission of your company, this is both in the hiring of new positions, but also just the what does your company do and spreading that brand. Our employees, the folks who work here, they really internalize things like they love working here. They love the company. I can't tell you how many stories we have of folks going, hey, I was at this baseball game and happened to run into who worked at this school district, which is what we sell to. And I just started talking with them about and I started telling them about Illuminate. We had a great conversation. People just start to do that because of a little bit around our culture. And I'd say with job postings and whatnot, it's the same thing. A very, very high percentage as a result of our hires come from internal referrals. And people love to talk about our culture and our company. They really want to get their friends to come work here. They point them to the Glassdoor reviews. They have them come in and talk to folks. And so really, again, it's not a quick fix because you really have to have that culture and that love of the company internalized. But when you do that, the results are very telling.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And again, just a Glassdoor data point that our chief economist has crunched here before is that, it confirms referrals are still the #1 source of quality hires across companies, industries of all sizes. So looks like it's no different at Illuminate, and that's actually the case here at Glassdoor too. This next question to JB. We mentioned this earlier, touched on it, but I want to get a little more specific. When you talk about looking at real data when trying to get buy-in or more investment in company culture from the top, someone like you, what specifics are we talking about here when it comes to real data? Like what is shown in an email, what is shown in that Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things, but looking at like year-over-year turnover would be one. So you can look at what changes maybe you made with regards to culture year over year, and did that have a positive impact type of a thing. Also just general employee feedback. We do annual reviews here where everybody rates everybody peer-to-peer that they work with, and so you can look at year over year performance of individual people and leaders, and they rate things on the company-like culture as well. So those different things you can look at. Hey, last year we were 4 stars. This year we were 4.6, so we saw some improvements, or maybe we didn't. And what did we do differently, with regards to culture on that front? Quality of applicant, I think, is something we look at too. Try to rate the applicants and the interviews and see if there's improvement. So the ways that we're generating these applications. We know the quality level of those things. And I think culture filters down into that, because if you're getting a lot of good positive feedback online, you're generally going to attract better talent. 96% of people, before they call you or fill out a lead form or something like that, they search your brand name and the term reviews. And employees are doing the same process. And they're looking at a combination of customer reviews and employee reviews to determine if they even want to submit that application. This is before they ever submit it. And so you want to have a good online reputation, and that's going to help attract better talent. So those are just a few high-level ones. You could go deeper on it, but whatever you want to track that makes sense for your business, I think you need to track, and then look at, for us, we usually look at year over year on these types of things.
All right, and with that, JB, I want to thank you. Jim, especially want to thank you for jumping in on short notice here, and Cassie and BambooHR, definitely want to thank you guys for making today possible. So thank you all for the great tips and advice, and with that, I'm going to toss it back to Nina here.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott, and thank you again, Jim, Cassie, and JB, all for joining today and sharing all of your wonderful insights. And thank you to everyone on the line for tuning in. I know it's not easy to take an hour of your day, so appreciate you joining us today. For those of you that did ask, we will be sending out the recording and slide deck post-webinar, so just be on the lookout for an email from our team with that in the next few days. And feel free to as well follow both BambooHR and Glassdoor on social media and our blogs as we post tons of more insightful information such as this panel. So again, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Bye everyone.